Hey everyone, thanks for joining Learn to Play Games. My name is Lance, and in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at these 4 tin box games that are going to be coming to Kickstarter from Galen's Games. These are 1 to 2 player games. Each one of them is going to have a solo mode included, and otherwise they're going to be head-to-head games where you're going to be able to battle with your opponent. And these are quick games. Most of them are anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes long, and so these are great to throw down, and they take up a small amount of table space, so you can play most of these games just about anywhere. So each one of them is going to be a little bit different, and in this video I'm going to go over the main features and then show you a quick sample turn of each one of the games to give you a better idea how they will play. As always, if you find my videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. It's one of the easiest ways you can support channels like mine so we can continue to grow, be able to produce this content. I do also want to point out that all the materials here are prototype materials that are subject to change and look a lot better than the final production copies of the games. So let's go ahead and head to the table and we'll see what this one's all about. Let's start with Veron Arizona. In Veron Arizona, players are going to be alternating turns. During each player's turn, that player is going to perform 3 steps that are going to be done in order. First, the player is going to be able to move the car, and the car can be moved up to 2 spaces, including going around corners, moving straight, and turning 180 degrees. Once a player has finished their move, they're going to choose one of the face-up cactus cards to gain. So let's go ahead and say with this player that I choose this card here. So then if the card has a win on it, I'll get to add that to my area. And then the card itself is going to be added to my tableau, which is a 4x4 grid. To begin the game, you simply can place the card out, and you're going to be building around the card as the game goes on. Then you're going to fill in the empty spots with a face-down card, and it'll pass to the next player. Now, players can also spend wins in a couple of different ways once you collect them. You can spend 1 to move your truck 1 additional space per win spent, or if you have 2 of them, you can spend 2 of them to change the positions of any 2 cards in your tableau. Once both players have a 4x4 grid, the players are going to total up all the points based on a number of different scoring factors, and the player who has the most points will be the winner of the game. Next, we're moving on to Heritage Farms. In the game, players are going to alternate taking turns, transporting goods and farmers from their farms over to their markets. And the goal of the game, again, is going to be having 3 of the different goods in 2 of the markets, including the foxes, the chickens, and the corn. If a player is able to accomplish that, then that player has won. Alternatively, if a player ever loses 3 or more goods, then the game is over and that player is lost. So looking at an example of this, let's go ahead and say that I move my boat to this location here, and I'm going to move the farmer off and the chicken. And the reason why I want to do that, and I'll go over that in a minute, I'm going to transport that over to this location. So that I'm going to deposit that chicken there, and then I also flip this over and I'll place my farmer on there. And those are the bonus tokens that you can gain throughout the game that are going to give you additional abilities during your turn. So from there then, let's go back over to this card here. So anytime there are no farmers on the card, whether it's on the farm or the market, so even if your opponent has a farmer there, then this rule will not apply. And then you're going to have the nature's law. So what that means is that if you have any chickens on there, they're going to eat any corn that is on that card, whether it is in the farm or the market. Then if there are any foxes on the card, they're going to eat all the chickens, again, in the farm and the market. So that is part of the strategy, is determining what the best placement is and potentially forcing your opponent not to move off of a particular location as a threat to them. So for example, if I went down here and dropped off a fox, then that player will probably not want to move off of his farm, even if he takes the fox, as there's another fox there and he'd lose both of his chickens. So that is the goal of the game. And again, the players are going to alternate turns, going back and forth, moving their boats and farmers from markets to the farms and from the farms to the markets. There's also an advanced mode, or a couple of advanced modes, that will include poisoned corn, which any chicken that eats will be killed. And then there's also the zombie chickens that will cause all kinds of problems for you. Now let's take a look at Monster Smashup. At the beginning of the game, each player is going to choose a mad scientist that they want to be, and there are 4 different mad scientists included in the game: Dr. Love, Dr. Deranged, Dr. Chaos, and Dr. Death. Each one of them has a special ability that will be triggered under certain circumstances, And then when monsters are defeated or killed, one mad scientist is going to flip over if the monster dies and have a different ability on the backside. And then this card will be flipped back over if his monster is able to kill then. So it'll constantly be rotating one player's card back and forth depending upon who defeats whose monster. Throughout the game, players are going to be building and splicing different monsters together, and each monster's card is double-sided that will provide you with a front side of that monster and a back side. So it lets you create all kinds of different combinations. On the head side of a monster, you're going to have the monster's stats, including its health and the amount of energy it's going to provide you. And then it's also going to have an if condition and a when condition on the backside. And so, for example, if life equals energy, then I'm going to get to carry out this ability. And there's all kinds of different abilities. Next, on the backside, you're also going to have the amount of damage the monster does, and there's going to be certain circumstances where you're going to be adding that, and then its speed to determine tiebreakers. And again, each one of them is double-sided, so you have all kinds of crazy, zany things you can come up with for these monsters. And the final thing I want to do is take you through a sample round real quick to explain a little bit more how the game plays. So there's a number of steps you're going to do in each round. The first is to create a monster. So each player is going to draw the top 3 cards from their monster deck, and then the players are able to combine those monsters to create a front and a back of each monster. And each card, again, as you saw earlier, is double-sided. So my player has some interesting things. So I have a Mega Shark I could do, and that could be interesting. And let's see, I actually kind of like that. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to try the Mega Shark. And then my other player has, I'm going to go with the Dire Antler. And this guy is pretty cool there as well. So from there, then each player is going to set their health to their monster's health, and they're going to gain some additional energy based on the intelligence of the monster. So then I get a 4 and a 4, so I'm at 7. Now the players have handled that. The next step is to roll. So each player is going to roll their set of dice. And I've got a 6 versus an 8. All right, so then it's going to go to the player that has the lowest total, and that player is going to get to go, and that player can choose to spend 1 energy to reroll both dice or 2 energy to reroll one of those dice. The player can also trigger their ability if that ability is able to be triggered at that point. So this player with the Dire Antler has, if the life is equal to the energy, I can steal 1 energy from my opponent. And the other player says, you roll the same number as your opponent's. So I did not. Both players reroll all dice. All right, so first off, my player over here can choose to do something. So I'm going to go ahead and spend 2 results to reroll the 2 and see if I can get a better number here. And I got a 3, so I'm up to 7. All right. And from there, then it's going to pass to the next player to do the same thing. So that player can choose to do anything they want. And I think at this point, I'm pretty good at 8. So I'm going to hold there. And so I'm going to pass, and it's going to go back to the other player. That player can do the same thing, either spending energy again to trigger one of those effects, or pass. Once both players have passed in sequential order, then it'll move on to the next phase. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I don't think I'm going to spend any more at this point. And so we're going to move into the next phase, which is the boost phase. So during this phase, it's a little harder for me to simulate this, as this is going to be kind of a rock, paper, scissors aspect, where each of the players is going to count down from 3, and then the players are going to do one of 3 things. A player is going to hold up 0 to 5 fingers, spending the amount of energy that player declared, and boosting their attack by that value. Another option is the fist, which is a defense, and this is going to, that player is going to gain energy based on their monster's intelligence, and then they're going to halve any damage that they take, or that player takes, at the end of the round. The final thing is to pound the table, and that is pushing the panic button. If that is done, that's going to force both players to re-roll their dice and determine the winner based on that result. But if the player hits the panic button and the other player defended, then the player that hit the panic button is an auto loss. So you only really want to do that at certain points, and that does add a really interesting element to the game where you're really trying to get into your opponent's head and figure out what they're going to do, as that can be a great strategy. If you feel like somebody's going to hit that panic button, doing the defense can give you a win in that situation and can be very beneficial. So in this situation, I'm going to go ahead and simulate this. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And I have 3 for this player. So he's going to boost his attack by 3 and spend 3 energy. And this player defended. So that player is not going to add any bonuses, but will gain 4 energy for that, up to the maximum energy that player can have. So the most I can have is 8. And then from there, then I am going to resolve the battle or the combat. So I'm going to total up my damage. So I've got 8 plus 3 there for 11, and the other player has 7. So I have defeated my opponent by 4 points. So from there, I'm going to deal the amount of damage based on the current round. So I am in round 1. Plus, if I get equal to or greater than that value on my monster, I also deal that amount of damage. So I did 4 damage, which is greater than the 3 that my monster does. So I'm going to do 3 damage on top of the 1 for a total of 4 damage. The other player did defend, so he's only going to take half damage, so he is down to 2 health. And then from there, then if both of the monsters are still alive, you're going to move the round counter up 1 on the track, and now the next round in the arena is going to do additional damage to the monsters, depending upon who wins there. This is going to continue going until one of the monsters is defeated. So let's go ahead and say that I was able to defeat the dire Antula. So that player I'm going to claim that monster's head as a trophy, and that is the first monster I've defeated. All other cards are going to be added to those players' discard piles. And the player that lost is going to flip over their card to the lost side or the back side, where they're going to get a little bit of a better ability. The other player is going to keep the side that they're on, or flip it back over if they have defeated a monster when they're on this side. And from there, this is going to continue going round after round until one of the players has defeated 3 of their opponent's monsters, and at that point, then that player has won the game. Let's wrap things up with Dice Clash. To start the game, each player is going to choose a warrior to represent them, and each warrior is going to have their card that's going to list their name, their icon, and their special ability that can be triggered by spending their red die. And each player is only going to have one of these that they'll be able to use during each one of the rounds. Each of the warriors is also going to have its own battle grid that'll have the symbol of that warrior that'll match. And on the battle grid, it is going to be broken down into 9 squares, with some of those squares having different icons on them that will trigger different effects when you place dice in there, including adding modifiers to attacks, modifiers to defense, being able to flip your die, being able to move a die on your grid, and changing the number on your die plus or minus 1. And there's going to be other symbols as well. Now, once a player is defeated, they're going to flip their warrior over to its adrenaline side, and they'll do the same thing with their grid. And at this point, then, if that player is defeated again, then the game is over and that player has lost. And there's going to be 6 different warriors that you'll be able to choose from in the game. You have the Viking, the Ninja, the Highlander, Samurai, Spartan, and the Knight. The game itself is going to alternate with players taking turns. During a player's turn, that player is going to select one of their dice from their dice pool and place it in one of their slots. And at the beginning of the game, it doesn't matter which slot you put it in, it'll modify the die as normal. But as the game goes on, you're going to be attacking your opponent, and then your opponent is going to have to defend and attack you back. So the die is going to have multiple values after that first die is placed. And each die that you play is going to have to be a higher value than your opponent's. Until you get to the point where you cannot play a die of a higher value physically, then you can choose to play a 1, and that will reset the grid. Now, if a player cannot defend, then that player has been defeated and will flip their character to their adrenaline side, or if it's already on the adrenaline side, they'll lose. So let's look at a couple of examples of this. Let's go ahead and say that the Spartan is the starting player, and you have 3 different types of dice. The black dice have no additional effect. The white die, when played, is going to have you reroll all of the dice in your pool, and these are going to be kept hidden from your opponent, and you're going to roll these initially to create your dice pool at the beginning of the game. The final die is the red die, and that will trigger your ability based on your warrior. So let's go ahead and keep it simple. Let's go ahead and say that I play this 3 here, and I'm going to play it in my -1 defense slot. So from there, then I am attacking the knight with a value of 3. So the knight now is going to play a die of 4 or higher, or modifying with that. So I could place this 3 in here and modify the, well, I'd have to place it in here for the modifier of defense to bump it up by 2. So I'm going to keep it simple. Actually, I can do this. So I will place this 3 in here and modify that to a 4. So now I'm defending with a 4, and my opponent, I'm attacking my opponent with a 4. So now my opponent is going to have to play a 5 or higher. So let's see what I got here. Let's go ahead and do this one, and I'll place it in there. So now that is an attack of 6, and I have defended that. So now my opponent is going to have to defend with a 7 or higher. So let's go ahead and do this one. So I'll place it in there. So now I'm defending with an 8, and I'm attacking with a 6. So the other player is going to defend with a 7. So that player could again do this, and it would kick back. And this is going to, again, continue going until one of the players is not able to defend the other player's die. Let's go ahead and say, for example, that I could not do that, though. And let's say that I wanted to play this instead. So if I have to, let's do, well, hold on a second. Let's do, that was a 6. So I have to play a 7 on defense or higher. So I can do that. And then my other, let's go ahead and say now that I'm attacking back, and the other player can, at this point, there is no die that's higher than that. So I can play this 1, and I'll play it into here. So now I'm attacking at 2, and I'm defending on 1, which is the one way of resetting the dice. Well, I hope you found this video helpful in learning more about these games and whether or not this is one you want to back on Kickstarter. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please post those in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Or swing by the Kickstarter's main page and drop any questions you have in the comment section as well. I'm sure the creator would love to hear from you and is more than happy to answer any questions you have. Until next time, I'll see you later.